So shall we start with a prayer?
Come and be with us today, O Holy Spirit, with Cynthia and me, as we talk about the book. Give us the insights into the book that will enlighten our listeners. And may everything we do today and say today at this session be pleasing to our Father in heaven. We ask this in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. So what led you to write another book?
Well, I had this thing in my mind going. About 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I think had an unfounded discomfort, I think, about what is happening in the country and in the world. A lot of things that was sort of making me feel uncomfortable. And at that point of time, I remembered an incident that took place when I was a teenager. That was about 60 to 65 years ago. There was a killing that took place very close to my house. A few feet away from the wall that was separating our home from the other home, from the other colony. There was a stabbing, a fatal stabbing. Our neighbors were supposed to have stabbed a man to death. The man he stabbed was a gangster.
Oh.
So he stabbed him to death, and of course he was caught and arrested, and he was sentenced he was given a life sentence. We all felt terrible about it because I didn't know this. I had seen this neighbor, this man, but I didn't know him. I didn't know his name, but I'd seen him. He seemed a very gentle kind of person. He kept to himself. At the most you saw him smile at somebody, but he didn't seem the kind of person who would actually stab a person to death. But he was charged with first-degree murder. This man whom he stabbed died. He ran across the fields and he died. He was arrested. My neighbor was arrested and given tried in court. It was a pretty not a very long trial, but he was given life sentence. And I remember feeling terrible. Our family felt terrible about it because we've seen this man. He looked a really calm, gentle kind of person who wouldn't sort of harm anybody. And even the neighbors and generally the parish, there was talk in the parish, in the village, about this happening, and everybody felt terrible. There was almost a kind of community guilt. It's almost as if they had a hand in his sentencing. And I thought about what's happening today. There's this guy, and I decided to write this story about this guy, about murder, the so-called murder, and I drew a character of this person in my mind. Since I didn't know him, I didn't even know his name. I drew a character of him as a deaf mute, a person with no hearing and no speech. And so he was silent. He couldn't really defend himself against whatever the forces that were trying to that wanted him imprisoned for life. So I thought in a way that represented what is happening today. Here we are, deaf mute. We are not saying anything. We're silent against so many things that are happening. I mean, the dishonesty, the corruption that we see in various pockets of society, whether it's our police force, our governments. I mean, you have a traffic. You do a slight traffic offense, you can go free if you just grease the palm of the traffic cop. We see all this happening. Now, besides this, there's other things that are not so pleasant, like the bigotry that is now growing. The bigot. Yes, and also the the moral police who sometimes are harsh on very simple people, just because of some of their weaknesses. They are harassed. We see that we see the hypocrisy that sometimes you see among our own communities in the parish, the self-righteousness, all of this. I think I thought of all this and I said, maybe I can write a story about it. So I wrote the story about the guilty. Who is guilty in this? Are we guilty for being silent? Is silence, in fact, as much a sin as telling a lie? I mean, I may not tell a lie, but I keep mum about something that I need to speak about. If my speech can, in fact, save a life, my testimony can save a life. If my testimony can do some good, if my testimony can change things, why am I silent?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah. So
because people don't speak up when they should. I think because they're afraid of the repercussions, but it's not right, because I think innocent people sometimes get in trouble for not doing something, but being accused of it.
Yeah, in fact, in a recent discussion with, I think I was talking to Kiki, and we talked about this, and we said it is, what's the difference between, is there a difference between silence, between what you call prudence, between prudence and cowardice? And so are we are cowards, and is that something that we should be proud of or be ashamed of? So it's really the silence of the lambs. So I created this person called Bastial. The person who stabbed him, called him Bastial, a deaf mute, a person who couldn't speak.
Yeah.
And that's the story. That's the book, The Guilty. It's in fact it's just a 20% fact, and the 80% all made up. It's fiction. No, it's based on an incident that I remember. And I see the novel as a kind of allegory. It's not an overt allegory. I don't preach in the book. It's a story, plain and simple. I tell a story of it's a murder story, a detective story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. It has the usual blood and gore of murder, and it has a courtroom scene and everything, and where the man is tried and sentenced because, in spite of his, he seems such a fine person, but he's tested also because there are forces that want him imprisoned. It's a detective story like any other, not perhaps not like an Agatha Christie or an Stanley Gardner, but it's a different kind of sleuthing. I would probably say it's a psychological kind of sleuthing, social sleuthing. I mean, we look at the story with society as a prism. We look at this crime with society as the prism. We're looking at it through the prism of society. So it's that sort of a story in which in usual detective stories you have you're presented with circumstantial evidence and that sort of all kinds and forensics. But this doesn't have all that. There's no circumstantial evidence presented, but it is circumstance as compulsion.
Yeah.
Are the circumstances of society, in fact, in some ways, responsible for some of the bad things that are happening, including crime.
I think there's no question that quite a bit of the evil that goes on is caused by this. Society, I don't know. From the time when I grew up in the 50s, I look around in the United States and it's entirely different. Safety issues. I mean, people think we're very safe here. I won't go to the evening mass because I live on a big lot of land and I'm just aware that someone could be lurking out there. It's so there's a sense, I think, here that things are not as safe as they used to be. And, to a great extent, I think it's because of the societal norms, how people are treated or not treated. It's the elderly, people of color, anyone who's mentally defective, not through their own fault, obviously. It's, people who have been accused of anything. It's a harsh country that it wasn't in the 50s. And I can't imagine, because we tend to export our worst. There's no getting around it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I think we're having an impact on the world that is quite negative. The pursuit of money and of status is the highest,
I think that's everywhere, really.
Yeah.
And pursuit of money and status. I mean, you sacrifice it, you can do anything for it. So that's where your dishonesty and your ruthlessness come in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah. Where, for instance, power. I mean, it is it's money and power that people are looking for. And then this, nothing else matters.
Yeah.
Except, I suppose there are people. I mean, we still have people here. There are activists who are working against this or speaking about it and are even protesting. And some of them have been arrested and put into prison. In fact, a couple of my friends, my friend's son and my cousin's son were in prison for nearly 5 years because they took up sides with the poor, and they fought with the authorities to get amenities and rights for for these poor people. And because they were inconvenient, they were being an inconvenience to the government.
Yeah.
They were in prison for 5 years. They've just been released on bail. So it's sometimes it is inconvenient and dangerous to actually stand up and fight, or to even speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really, it's the luck of the draw, whether you're born poor or rich. We're all people. And it just amazes me how no one can see that. Well, I won't say no one, but the majority either don't see it or don't care when they do.
Yeah.
So it's really a deplorable situation around the world, I guess. In some places, probably worse than others, but it's discouraging, because I was lucky. I was born in what we would call here the underclass, which means I was where the bad people were, and I was born in inner city. And, I was smart enough to get an education and get out. But most people weren't.
Yeah.
They needed help,
Yeah.
And I look back at that, and if I go back through Providence, Rhode Island now, and I go through the old neighborhood, I mean, most of the houses are just lots now. They've been torn down, burned down. And it's like, what is, why can't we see that everybody's a person, and do something? I mean, we can't help everybody, but we can help somebody, so it's very disturbing.
Right. Yeah. This the story of mine is set in the 1950s. So it's nearly 65 years ago or so. It is set, and I set it in a village called Marol, Marol, Marol. In fact, it's a suburban city in Bombay. It's a suburban village in Bombay. It's a suburb of Bombay, very close to the suburb that I lived in. I deliberately, as I say, with a sense of fun or humor, I selected Marol as the village because Marol happens. Marol is a kind of it's an anagram of the word moral, M-O-R-A-L, and I wanted to sort of bring out the pseudo morality of our communities, how it can be hypocritical and it can be this I'm holier than thou kind of feeling in parishes. In fact, let me read out something, a passage about Marol, the place that I've placed this novel. To a large extent, the pulpit and the confessional held a sway over the beliefs, biases, feelings, and behavior of the villagers of Marol. Most of them Roman Catholics. Everything that happened there, from the spying one late evening of 15-year-old Francesca holding hands with Rimaldo from Bamanwada, to the 7 rupees 4 annas missing from one Sunday collection, was discussed at home and on streets with the earnestness of collective moral responsibility to decide whether or not to grant the village's absolution to the sinners in advance of the confessional. On the verandas of some of the impressive Portuguese and British-style cottages, and in the narrow passages between one house and another, you could eavesdrop on what the disinterested may call gossip, and what others could see as theological discourse of the self-righteous suburban Catholic.
Mm.
Imagine then the swells from the splash of a fatal stabbing in this very morally tremulous village.
Mm.
The parishioners' sensitivity to ethical issues was sharpened over the years with every new vicar and with regular triduum missions and retreats.
Mm.
These were given by the Redemptorists, who had them believe that raging hellfire would be theirs with the mere striking of that little seemingly inevitable matchstick called sin, if it crossed the boundaries of what their catechism defined as venial.
Mm-hmm.
The annual retreats came as reminders of the incendiary boundaries of their faith. Once after the Triduum and retreat given by Father Patrick Callahan, there were whispers of disappointment. Father Patrick devoted the 3 days of the retreat to the infinite mercy of the Almighty and included spiritual exercises in which they had to write down praises of their neighbor. He presented no vivid images of the fires of hell, no screaming tomes about the ugliness of sin, nothing like that. The village's moral and spiritual sentinel were deflated. This was not what they expected from a retreat. Later, it was made known to the parishioners that their vicars sat Father Patrick down and conveyed the disappointment of the parishioners and his own personal feelings of being let down. So the vicar tells the Redemptorist father, these retreats are held to turn on the heat, Father, not to apply poultices. Nothing works as well as the fire and brimstone of the hell we have built up for the salvation of souls. Father, said the Redemptorist priest, I came here with those flintstones right there in my retreat notes. Father Patrick was reported to have said with a giggle, but I spoke to a few of your parishioners and came to the conclusion that any more hellfire would ignite even further the guilt, fear, and ungodly scrupulousness I saw among them. The parish's preoccupation with sin and wrongdoing needs to be replaced with the attitude of brotherly charity.
Mm-hmm.
Pharisaic laws have to give way to the 8 Beatitudes. So I'm not quite sure, said the priest, I agree with that, nor will our parishioners. I assure you, said the parish priest. Father Patrick is said to have leaned forward and tapped his fellow priest on the knee, and with his well-known Irish humor said, this village is called Marole, Father, not moral. He guffawed at his own joke. That offhand anagram of the village name that just stripped off the Irish padre's tongue seemed to have shaped the life and behavior of the village till as late as the 1940s and 1950s. It could well be that the pointing finger of the holier-than-thou had pushed the wheels of gossip and slander across those slender boundaries between faith, ethics, and crime.
That's good writing. That's very good writing.
Yeah, no, but this describes, in fact, I mean, in my memory, this is what I remember of my own parish of those days. And as a youngster, a teenager, it sort of struck us. I mean, things changed later. I think what I'm describing now is really, I don't think you see so much of it today. But you may still see that in pockets.
Yeah.
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 So I don't know how it would have been in the place you grew up.
Yeah, I wasn't Catholic, so I can't answer that question. I converted as an adult, but I certainly know that there was a sense of that Catholics in the area were believed to have a sense of being better than other people because they took sin so seriously. Now, that was in the 50s and early 60s, so I have no idea what it would be like now.
Okay.
But yeah, it's that scrupulosity, I guess you'd call it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always a danger, I think, when you have the faith, or any Christian faith, perhaps, when you have a faith, a strong faith, and you know what's right and wrong, I think there's always that temptation,
Right.
to just be so judgmental.
It is. It's this dualism that I am right, and
You're wrong.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not a Catholic, you but that's not there. It's not there anymore. I mean, yeah, at least in Spain, it's not there. They are all Catholic, all baptized Catholics, but you don't find them in church at all. And yet, every Catholic feast is celebrated in a grand way here. I mean, they celebrated Corpus Christi with, they shut down streets and decorated the streets with flowers and stuff like that. They celebrated the feast of Saint Anna recently for one week with fireworks and concerts and things. Saint John the Baptist, Saint Peter and Paul, all these feasts are celebrated.
Yeah.
But they're cultural affairs, really.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. It's come down as a tradition, and they're traditionalists, and it's nice. It's pretty. It's enjoyable. Yeah. So it is. In fact, I see this book, this entire story, as one big confessional, where the community is striking its breast and saying, "Am I at fault?" It's like the table, the Last Supper table, where the 12 apostles, including Judas, says, when Christ says that one of you will betray me, you have each one of them saying, "Lord, is it I? Lord, is it I? Lord, is it I?" And you find that same kind of. I think this book is doing that kind of thing where as society we have to ask ourselves, "Lord, is it I?"
Yeah.
We have a number of interesting characters in this book, and I think one of the main characters, besides the person, this Bastial, the deaf mute, besides him, I think one of the main characters of the book, one of the main characters is Marol itself. The village itself, the place itself, is a character who is an important character of the book. Shaping the story. And then, of course, you have prototypes like the policeman, what policemen do today. And then there is the gang leader, the Don, who is benefactor on one hand, and terrorist and criminal on the other.
Yeah.
The benefactor in the sense he sponsors sports, he sponsors music, he sponsors I mean, today you find them even sponsoring movies and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this is paradoxical. It's a contradictory character,
Yeah.
which is you have them benefactors and criminals in one.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one character. Then uh, we have the person. There's a lady there called Imaldi who runs a speakeasy.
Mm-hmm.
She's another fine. I mean, she's a good person.
Mm-hmm.
Who, unfortunately, her parents died when she was an infant, and she was
Mm-hmm.
given for adoption to an aunt. Now, there is a custom or tradition in Goa
Mm-hmm.
called posques. Posques are adopted children
Mm-hmm.
who are taken on generally by relatives,
Mm-hmm.
but instead of being treated as their own children, they're treated as servants, made to do the work at home.
Mm-hmm.
So they work and they don't get paid. They get looked after. They get their food and their shelter and their clothing, but they don't get paid. So they're unpaid servants.
Mm-hmm.
So she was a posque who eventually had a terrible marriage, and now she distills liquor, illicit liquor, and distributes it in the house in a speakeasy, and that's where the murder takes place. So we have this, and of course the eyes of society look down on a woman like that.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas on the other hand, there's another woman who comes from a rich family who does this in a different way, but she is respected.
Mm-hmm.
But this person who's poor,
Yeah.
does it for a living, is looked down upon, and the Legion of Mary goes are there to sort of try and convert her.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas she is already a converted good person who's doing this only for a living. So we have a few characters like that in our story,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's how I see this book as probably challenging the conscience of society itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, society could use a lot more conscience, couldn't it?
I know.
Almost everywhere.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is there something called a social conscience?
Mm. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's a book that's much needed at this point in time.
Yeah. But I don't discuss this in the book. There's no this is we're discussing it, but it's a story. It's the whole thing is just a story, and I think it's up to the reader and for us here to sort of, you can take whatever meaning you want out of the story, but this is in fact the structure.
Stories are really important. People will pick up fiction before they'll pick up nonfiction, usually, the average person. And I do believe, in this country, I'm trying to think, Uncle Tom's Cabin. Have you ever read that?
Oh, I read that as a school book.
Yeah, that had a tremendous impact here. Yeah. And I'm sure that there are other books that we're just not aware of that have had the same kind of effect. Sometimes you can read about things that have happened and be like, wow, something should be done about that. But there's something about fiction, about the story and the characters that I think moves us more. And, I think that often social change can come around because of it. And it's something that's needed. Stories are powerful, as opposed to just reading a list of facts. you know. I mean, even though the facts, you might look at statistics or something and say, wow, this is really awful. This many people were killed this way or whatever. But the story, even if it's fiction, gets you riled up in a way because of the personality of the person, the circumstances. So I think fiction is extremely powerful in possibly changing social structures and how people think. You know, so probably I think much more so than nonfiction.
Yeah,
But that's just my opinion.
There is a lot written by journalists and sociologists and literary people. You know, books written. But I mean, on this, they're discussing on this. But well, that's not my field of writing, and so I thought I'd do it like this. It's and I enjoyed writing the book.
Yeah. Good. Yeah, I enjoy writing too, but you know, the things that you're talking about in that book are important, and you know, that could have an effect. You never know what your effect is. You won't know until you're dead, and God tells you. But so we never know the impact we've had on this earth, really. With our work or with our families, with our personality, you know, we don't really know the real impact.
Yeah, our personal impact, we never know. We sometimes know the impact that people have had. Some people have had.
Yeah.
But you don't know what impact you're going to make.
Yes, exactly. That's the important thing.
You can try your best to. I mean, we did.
Exactly.
I mean, we did. My wife and I did a lot of work in the slums when we were younger, not now. While we were doing it, we didn't know where it would lead. But today I've seen whatever we started there has grown. In fact, we went to a slum where there was nothing, and we started constructing small structures as dispensaries, which could be used as a dispensary, as a school, as a church. Today, that structure is big buildings of high school, and there's a church and everything. All that started when we went there and we started something very small. We didn't know it would end up big, but it's made some impact. Now, some of that stuff we can see, but not always.
Yeah. But, you know, when you make an impact like that, even through something like a building, and people are going through that building, whether they're going for education or, you know, whatever, and you can't really see the impact because you don't know the people who have gone through the process there and what they've done. You know, so these are, you know, we have an impact for good or bad. It's rarely neutral. You know, Ernie, that's my opinion. It's either good or bad. And, you know, we'll find out at the end, obviously, but.
You have to do what you have to do, regardless of, you know, what's going on.
Yeah. The real big thing to me is you have to always try to do good to the best that you can, and you have to be kind. You know, and the kindness to me is, you know, is so important. I mean, you know, we don't have a lot of beggars in Vermont, but where I lived in Connecticut, I will often give money if I see somebody's begging. I mean, if I'm going to give them $1 or $2, even if they don't need it, it's better than not giving it to them, right? Because they might need it. So one day I was giving a couple of dollars to this guy that looked like he must have been a drug addict. I mean, he was just a mess. And this middle-aged guy started to scream at me. And he was like, why are you giving him his money? He's nothing but a bum. Keep your own money. You need it for yourself. And I thought, wow, I just ran into Satan. You know, I mean, it was terrible. The guy was absolutely, and the guy that I gave the couple of bucks to, he was like looking at this man like, whoa, what's going on? But it's like the lack of kindness, the lack of friendliness. I mean, $2 that I gave somebody 20 years ago didn't have an impact on me either way, but it may have been able to get him a cup of coffee and a donut. And maybe that was just the thing he needed that day. So, I mean, we have to, I really believe you always try to do good and you always try to be kind. There are so many mean people in the world.
Right.
I don't know how they live with each other or with themselves, really. Just mean people. But, I always try to be nice. Sometimes it's hard, but I try anyway.
Yeah, it depends. Now, in a place like Bombay, it's hard. You see a lot of manufactured beggary.
It's not even real. Like gangsters.
Not even real. So then you have to then use your
judgment.
Judgment.
Yeah.
It's not easy. So you don't get, and there are so many out there, outstretched hands. You can't give everybody. And you have to make a judgment on who to give.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have that feeling of wanting to help, I mean, that's all you need. I mean, and then of course there you need a judgment. You need that little discernment.
Well, I think that it's not hard to tell. Always, it's not always hard to tell, I should say, if somebody really needs help or not. I mean, there's not much here in Vermont that I've seen where, even though we have some cities, they're not cities by world standards. They're probably like small towns. But in the lower part of New England, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, there are a lot of beggars that you'll run across. But you can tell when you look at them. I mean, there's something about a desperate look in the eyes. Yeah. That even so you may be dressed in clean clothes, but you look panicked. There's something wrong, Yeah. And you should be able to pick up on that. So, I help when I can, or I try to help when I can. Maybe I've been ripped off a few times and don't know it, but you know what?
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't. I would rather try to do good and end up just being taken for a patsy. Because, I mean, we're only talking a few dollars, but that could make a little bit of a difference in someone's life. It's a good thing I don't live in Bombay. I'd be broke. People suffer so much. It's really a shame.
Yeah. But we don't see that kind of here in Spain, for instance. So different. You don't see that kind of beggary, but there are beggars. They don't look like beggars, but you go to church and you find them, some of them, standing out there with their cups, or palms outstretched. And Ingrid has given some coin to one of them. The next she's seen him at the gambling den.
Oh, yeah.
But of course, I mean, you can't. It's difficult to tell. I mean, so, but it's okay. I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, it's not going to break you if it's just some small coins. I mean, the problem is that there are people who are professional. They're really professional beggars, and they sometimes they're really bad people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just in this country where we're so money oriented and education oriented, I think it's hard for people to actually get a job if they don't have. I mean, they can get something like cleaning bathrooms or something. But it's hard to get a job without some education. And so many of our people, I have no idea why they don't even graduate from high school. They drop out at 16. And it's like, I look at people that do that and it's like, do you realize you just ruined the rest of your life? Because you don't want to go through 2 more years of school, but you can't talk sense into people.
They've got to see it themselves, yeah.
Yeah, they do. I bet there's a lot of people who are somewhere between 30 and 50 that say, that old woman that came up to me and said I shouldn't drop out of school, she was right. But it's just, you can't. In this country anyway, I don't know. I suppose now in most of the world, you don't have education, you're doomed. You'll never get ahead. Not getting ahead is necessarily the best plan, but you want to be able to support a family. You want to be able to help people. You can't do that if you don't have money, and you can't get money if you don't have education here. And I think it's getting to be like that all over the world.
But you have functional literacy there, isn't it? Some kind of functional education where I suppose that you train people for a trade. Even if you've dropped out of school,
yeah, we do. We call it vocational. And so they learn how to do something. I think that it does get people jobs, but tied to that is, do they or do they not have a work ethic? So if you're not raised to see work, you're not necessarily going to think that that's something you should do. I mean, I'm 73, and I have people that I work with, and they say, when are you going to retire? And I said, maybe at 75, assuming my health holds. Maybe not, because I like to work. I like to contribute to society. But so many people, they don't like work. They try to avoid it when they're young. If they don't, and they work because they want money or status, which is another thing that people go for here, probably again all over the world. But they leave as soon they take early retirement. I know people that retired at 58, and I'm like, so what are you going to do now? Watch TV? I do that at night after I work, if it's a good show. But yeah, so I don't know. Yeah. But
we had to retire at, there was a retirement age. I retired at 60, but after that I sort of joined a friend of mine who opened who started a communication institute. He had retired as well. He had got his money from his gratuities and everything, and he set up an institute for communication, because he also was from advertising. So his name is Walter Saldana. He sort of roped me into this communication education. So for 5 years I did that. It was a management institute. I was there. We were on campus for 5 years. But after that, moved back to Goa, where we lived there. We lived in Goa. I did some kind of consultancy there, and did some kind of also some workshops, creative workshops there. But not much after that. And then I started writing. Yeah. So I was able to spend some time writing. So my writing started after my retirement.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think if you have good health and you're able to retire. I mean, I could retire now, but I don't want to. If you retire and you still have the energy and you still have some goals, that's what you want, where you can do those things you've wanted to. So I enjoy life. I know people think it's weird because I work a lot. I work 3 jobs. I love them. And I volunteer at the parish.
Really?
Yeah.
That's 73 to have 3 jobs. Wow.
Yeah, I have. Well, I have one full-time job and I have two part-time jobs teaching Catholic theology. So it's, I love it. And I think I have a duty, having gone through all of the education at Holy Apostles and then at Dominican House to get a license.
Right.
I mean, this isn't hard work. I sit and talk. Right? And then I also volunteer at my parish where I'm teaching a 15-month course on Catholic social teaching. Again, I sit on a stool in front of a class and I talk. It's not hard. If you know your stuff, it's not hard. But
you have to prepare for all that, haven't you? That's work.
Well, no, not really, because unless a new encyclical comes out, like for Catholic social teaching, I just go over the lectures I've had for years. I start with Rerum Novarum. I go right up through, through Benedict and through Francis. Now, if something else comes out, I'll read it and make another lecture. But basically, it's reading what I've already written because it's explaining that. And so I sit there and I talk. And then they feed me. I'm not going to complain. They bring cake. But yeah, so I work the 3 jobs and I do the volunteer work. But, at some point, I guess probably at the end of 2025, when I'm 75, I will at least start cutting back if I can live that. If I work and live that long and still can work, and maybe I'll just fully retire. But I enjoy working.
But the kind of work you're doing, you can continue doing. I think even after 75, you enjoy it.
I do.
Yeah, so there's no reason why you should stop.
Yeah. I enjoy, because I enjoy, especially Catholic social teaching. I was originally trained as a sociologist, and then I converted and went into theology. I got educated in theology, but I enjoy telling people about the wonderful things that the church has said and the wonderful things that we can learn and do. And, that excites me. It's not a boring job like sitting somewhere typing, but yeah, so I'm, and I do the interviews for Sebastian. So I'm busy. Jeff is going to have a hard time catching up with me. Yeah. So I really enjoy it. Theology is really my passion. And, it's funny because when I was young, religion didn't mean anything really. But when I converted, my whole life changed. Changed. Boom, boom, turned around. It was unbelievable. So.
Yeah.
So I think, if you know this stuff and there are people who don't, you almost have an obligation to make sure that they do know as much as they can about God and about the church.
Right.
So. Yeah. Anyway, that's my goal, to just keep working to 75, maybe later.
Good work. Yeah. Okay. Good thing. Yes.
Yeah. So.
Right.
Yeah. So, next time you write something, make sure you get in touch with me because we'll have to do another interview. You write quite a bit, don't you?
Well, yeah. I've got about eight or 9 books out. Not all of them like this. The first book, I think the first piece of writing I did before my retirement was the souvenir of Pope John Paul II's Pope John Paul II's visit to India. I did the official souvenir for that. I went around in the same plane with him to the all over the country. I called the book the 14 Stations, like the Way of the Cross. And each station was like a 14, like the Way of the Cross kind of
Good idea. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
right,
creative.
kind of thing. Yes. So I did that, and after that, I did a couple of biographies. One of them of my father,
Mhm,
and I did a couple of books on management.
mhm,
One on chief executives, the other one on marketing and advertising,
mhm,
and so and a novel which was published by Speaking Tiger. It was called A Village Dies. And then these three:
mhm,
Pavement Prayers, Saint Lakshmi, and this one, The Guilty.
mhm. Well, that's good. Yeah, I've written 2 books. I wouldn't mind writing more. The first one was The History of Holy Apostles, the seminary I worked in for 28 years. And it was, I also got a lot of pictures so that people could see it historically. And then I wrote my memoir, which is that's what we call a Debbie Downer in this country. My life was so bad that when people read it, they're like depressed. But the ending is happy. The ending so far, anyway, is happy.
Yes.
But, yeah. Thank you anyway for giving me this interview. I thought it's
Thank you for taking the interview. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Same here.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Okay.
Would you like to end with a prayer? Why don't you end the prayer?
Okay.
End the meeting with a prayer.
Okay. Why don't we say an Our Father together?
Yeah.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Our Father,
who art
in heaven, hallowed be
hallowed
thy
be
name.
thy name.
Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those
who trespass
against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen.
Amen.
Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
So see you soon, I hope.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, you take care.
Yeah, all the best.
Yeah, same here. Bye-bye.